Hello and welcome to Good Morning, and thank you guys all for being here, both in the campus students here in the audience, and we have some folks in the live stream online. It's great to be here. My name is Kathy Craven. I am the program director for the Media Communications Bachelor's of Science program, and I have the privilege of hosting Life After Full Sail. You guys have made the right choice to be here today because this is going to be an incredible panel. We're going to have a lot of fun. And really glad that everybody is here today. So we have today Leslie Brathwaite. Leslie, good to have you guys. Mix engineer and producer, we have Jack Geckler. Animation lead, crowd supervisor with Digital Domain. We have Tim Naylor, co-founder and Creature Arts and Mechanics Creative Technologies Consultant, Exo Tools. Doesn't that sound fun? Let's find out what that's all about. Phil Pallen, brand strategist. Great to have you too. So I'm just going to throw it over to you guys, and if you would just really briefly, so they kind of have some context, give us an idea of what the work is that you're doing now. Then we're going to switch gears and talk about Life After Full Sail.
Tim.
I mean, right after Full Sail.
You want to start with really?
What's your title again?
Yeah, let's go over that again.
Does it fit on a business card?
I started a little company called Creature Art and Mechanics with 3 other business partners, so I'm a co-founder in that. And I have another little technology company with another business partner as well. So I'm actively doing that, and I'm actively looking. Actually, it's funny because you guys came at an interesting time for my life. I'm looking for work right now, trying to reinvent myself, which is why
We can do
I'm
that.
hang out with Phil. See?
We can
That's
do
why I'm
that.
hanging out with Phil.
So I help people reinvent themselves. No, I help people position, build, and promote their brands. Primarily people, so I do a lot of personal branding.
Nice, thanks.
I manage those two, and I need permission from him. I'm a mix engineer, so I literally just mix records, and I produce every now and then when I feel like it. I'm a mixer.
You are a mixer. I'm a lead animator and a crowd supervisor at Digital Domain. I just wrapped a couple weeks ago on the new Power Rangers movie. Comes out in March.
Sweet.
Nice.
And this last week, I was actually doing a spot for the NBA for All-Star Weekend, working closely with Kyrie and LeBron and Curry. Like my boy Socks.
Awesome. All right, so you guys take yourself back to graduation day, and you have walked across the stage, the pictures have been taken, the parties have been had. Then what? What's on your mind? What are you thinking right then? Are you terrified? Are you excited? What's going on in your head at that point?
When does my school loan kick in?
Right. All of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's excitement. It's you're anxious. You're nervous. You're trying to figure out. You're hungry. All of the above, like literally hungry, not figuratively.
Right.
Ramen noodles are your friend, and low budget meals, and you're just trying to piece together in your mind what's the next step. For me, I spent tons of hours in career development before I graduated. I got to know at the time it was Tammy. She was Gilbert at the time, but Tammy Elliott, and I was her best friend. And she was my career dev rep, and that's where I spent most of my time, trying to utilize the resources I had here at school.
Nice. Good choice of best friend too, I must say.
Oh yeah.
What about you guys? Anybody else?
I was, for back before the interwebinets that'll place my age, we had to do something called VHS tapes. Anyone know what those are? I hope still, maybe 1 or 2 people, I hope. So we
Literally
basically,
1 or 2 people.
Right. Like, I noticed that.
Yeah.
Like, nobody else.
That included me. Yeah.
Quiet you. So when I graduated, I basically had a stack of VHS tapes that were my demo reel, and I was trying to figure out who to mail them to. And it wasn't the internet where you can load up your reel on Vimeo and kind of just send some people a link. You had to find the physical address, and there was hardly any way back then to find. I was going for visual effects and film. So there was hardly any information on where these companies actually existed. So trying to find the address, working with career development as well to try to figure out if they knew. It was such a brand new industry at the time, digital media in 96, 97. So it was a totally different world, like going to SIGGRAPH and, having your normal backpack and then your backpack full of demo reels and then handing out VHS tapes. Now I hear that, students come up and they just have their iPad and they just kind of, show it. That it was just a totally different world. There was no infrastructure to kind of figure out how to get in contact with these companies. So the scary level was through the roof. Besides even the student loans, and it was pretty terrifying, I have to say.
I can contribute to the general theme of career development, which I visited, I think, in my first, I know I went there my first month of Full Sail. As an international student, there was more pressure on me. I couldn't just hang out after graduation. If I decided to just hang out, I would have been sent back to Canada. So I had to line something up. So I spent months and months planning, what is it I'm going to do when I graduate? And then everything I planned, which for those people who know my story, was an internship with Ryan Seacrest that I got fired from a week before I was set to begin. So all the months of planning really were not productive because I ended up having to graduate and start from scratch. And it was thanks to career development, specifically Jess Pollock, shout out, that she helped me find another internship within a week.
Awesome. Wow. Shout out to career development today. That's great. Yeah. So you're terrified, you're thinking about your loans, you're literally hungry. What do you do? What work did you get? How did you fall into your first gigs?
I started by applying to jobs. That felt like something I was supposed to do. So I was in Entertainment Business Masters. Through that program, realized it was branding that I really, really enjoyed. That's what I wanted to do. So I applied to agencies. I moved to LA and just thought that was what I was supposed to do. But no one called me back. So I ended up doing a workshop over a weekend that I signed up for when I moved out to LA because I thought I wanted to become a TV host. And through that workshop, met my first 3 clients, all individuals with small budgets that needed help designing logos and building a website. And I was like, I can help you with those things. I'm not sure how yet, but I'll figure it out. And by helping them with those projects, I was able to pay my next month of rent. And that's how it all began for me.
Nice.
Everybody's looking at me like I'm next.
Yeah, your turn, I guess, Leslie.
Okay. For me, it was about just going in with the mentality of I tend to think differently about things. So, I walked into the studio manager's office, and my goal is to, just look at things in a different way. So instead of what can I bring to the table, I'm the guy that brings the table. Mm-hmm. So it's. I walk in, he has a stack of resumes on his desk, and instead of putting mine in the stack, I had heard him say he needs a storage space cleaned out, and I was like, I'll do it. And he was like, who are you? And I was like, I'm your 3 o'clock, intern appointment. And he was like, well, all right. And so my thing was, I go in and offer something of myself. How can I help you? How can I make myself valuable to you? That's my whole mentality. And it's not about me coming asking for anything. What can I do for you? And my goal is to make people want to keep me around and to fill any need that I see around me. That was my mission in life.
Nice. And how did that work out for you?
Worked out really well because I cleaned the storage space really well, and 5 people were walking around when I was sitting in the waiting area, and man, the storage space is super clean. I mean, the intern did a great job, and da-da-da. So when I started hearing that, I was like, yep, I'm in. I'm good.
Awesome.
I need somebody needs something else. And then it was right after that, I went and got his lunch, and then right after that, I think I organized some cables in the back. I was just doing stuff all day. And the other interns were just sitting there watching TV. There were interns that were there a few weeks before I was. And I was like, y'all are tripping. I gotta, I'm in do mode. And that was me all the time. That wasn't just a first impression thing. That was every day. I was that guy.
They're probably still watching TV.
Yeah.
They're probably still watching TV, yeah. They're not up here, I know that. No. So be the table. You get that? Yeah. Be the table. That's awesome. Jack?
It actually, in all fairness, it actually took me a couple years before I got the gusto to after graduation to actually make the decision to, I need to, you know, same as Phil, I need to be in LA. That's potentially, and I'm from Tim's generation, if we're dating each other here, of the VHS tape. And it just, at the time, it really felt like to get a job in LA, and if you wanted to work in film, you really had to be there. They weren't really keen on flying people out. And I thought that was the way to go. And an opportunity arose where a friend had got out there and kind of loosely threw out, well, you know, you could stay on my couch if you ever make it out here. And I just pulled the card. I go, oh, for real?
Yeah.
and then within a week, I was on his couch, and he had a little one-bedroom in North Hollywood. And I think he was as shocked as I was there. But, you know, it's funny, in that little scenario even, I was like Leslie at his house. I guarantee he's married now, and I guarantee, and I love her to death, but I guarantee I did more housework, cleaning, and cooking for him in that I'd say I was there for about 4.5 months on this couch than probably he's had done for him his whole life, because I felt so guilty, right? And it was tremendous motivation when I got to LA that I had to do something. I did not have a lot of money. I had like none. I was living on Little Caesars Pizza in LA and hot dogs, and it wasn't fun. And I was, you know, at the time of that, I think it was my late 20s, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? But every single morning I got up at 5. I knew what time business hours were. I started applying. I was on Craigslist. I was doing free work for any local film projects that were around, until I got a break where a game studio that had just started up called me in for an interview. And the way I look at interviews, you're going to hire me. If I'm in the room, you've already hired me. And that's not even an ego thing. That's just, I personally need to walk in with that kind of confidence. And I needed it. Because at the point, and maybe some of you have heard some of my older stories, but it was either I was going to be working a pottery barn or I was going to be working in the game industry. And I made it happen. You know, I got that first job, and then about 1.5 years, almost 2 years later, I got my first break in film, and kind of never looked back.
Nice.
And, you know.
Pottery Barn got some nice stuff, though.
No, they do, and I killed it in that interview.
Yeah.
So have you guys ever felt in over your head?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Every day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
What day is it?
You're faking it really well, Jack.
Seriously.
I think after my first week at ILM, I was way over my head. I taught computer graphics here, and I thought I knew what I was talking about. And then I got there, and it was disastrous. I almost lost my job in the first 3 weeks. There's and when you get to that level, there's no like grace. There's no like, hey man, it's okay, don't worry about it. Because if you take that mentality, then you're not going to be showing the initiative. So it was sink or swim. So that's when you need to have I'll clean the closet, I'll do the pizza run, I'll build a website, even though I don't know if that's the best way I want to do, you know, brand management, but if it's how I get started to get some money, I'll do it. So I wound up being put on cloth simulation even though I got hired. So I got hired to do something else. The second day I got there, they said, okay, well, yeah, whatever you want to do. Yeah, we're not doing that. You need to do cloth now. And I went, I've never done that before. And it was a brand new system at the time. And I walked into dailies, and everybody had already been finaling shots, and I was the new guy, and I had no clue what I was doing. So I was already behind the 8 ball. And I actually had to go back to school, and I printed out when I knew that I was the last person to final their shots all the time, every time. They had to give my shot over to someone else, my first shot on Star Wars. They gave it to someone else to finish. And I was like, oh, that is not a good sign. So I went into the training department. Because it was proprietary software, I figured out if they had a manual. I printed it out during my lunch hour, and I took it home with me that night, and I turned off everything, and for like 3 weeks, I just read that manual back and forth, highlighted everything, I got weekend, I asked for weekend access, and I would come in on the weekend. I wouldn't get, ask them for overtime. I would just come in on the weekend. I'd have my manual, and I would just run as many cloth simulations as I possibly could. And then I went to one of the leads, and I went, I'm really having a difficulty. Can you help? But I've already taken the initiative. And he spent 2 hours a day with me, and I finally got to an understanding of how to do it. So You will, no matter how much you think you know, you are going to find yourself in a situation where you are completely underwater. You need to ask for help, and you need to get ready to learn again and take that mentality of being a student again. You're a student now. If you're in technology or entertainment, you're always going to be a student. You graduate, you're not done being a student. It's just another day. Just another day.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, similar experience. Kind of when, graduating from Full Sail in 92, so we were still, out in the industry, we were still using tape. Anybody know what that is? Tape machines. So it was reel to reel, and it was, 24-track machines, and you had to splice tape and all this stuff. So right around 1995 was when Pro Tools really started ramping up and showing up in studios, and everybody was kind of converting to, digital. And it was a bit overwhelming at first coming from the analog world and having to now learn from all the guys I was hiring, all the interns and assistants I was hiring fresh out of Full Sail. Those were my teachers. I'd be like, man, show me how to do this, show me how to do that. And, you just got out of school, teach me how to do this, da-da-da. So it was a bit, like with Tim's situation, it was a bit overwhelming at first, learning all the new technology, how to be quick at Pro Tools. And I was like the old guy who learned on analog, and I was like, oh, okay. But I figured it out. I put in the time same way. Put in the time. I always went over it again, figured out how to get quick at it, and,
Nice.
Yeah, one instance in particular, a friend of mine had got me an interview at Rhythm and Hughes after I'd worked with him at a Studio Asylum for a while, and I knew they had a couple cool projects, and I walked in, and I thought the interview would be for animation, and I walked in, and the first interview was, hey, we've built this crowds team. We're using the software Massive they used on Lord of the Rings. We're going to be making this film called Golden Compass. So what do you think? And when you've never used software before, that all of a sudden you're in an interview and they're asking you, it was one of those instances, well, I can't BS my way out of this. There's no answer. I can't tell them I know it. I don't know it. And it kind of just struck me at that point, I needed to flip it and spin the fact that I can learn it. And pretty much the entire interview turned into this thing of me selling my ability to pick up the software. And I pretty much looked him in the eye and I go, I can be running shots within a week. You give me a shot, I can do this. And as confident as I thought I was as I left, I'm like, well, I didn't get that job. But that was a fun experience. Thank you. And that week they called me, and then the real pressure sunk in. Because that was software, much like proprietary, there was no documentation. Nobody was teaching it. And when I started, I got very lucky that there was a guy who sat across from me who had used it. And there was only a team of 4 of us. And I did what Tim did. I mean, it was also a humbling experience because I had to turn to him and be like, I need help, dude. This is my background, whatever. And it's a guy, Nick Lewandowski, who now we've worked forever. I hired him on Power Rangers for my team. And he was there for me. He didn't even second guess. I think being able to do that and humble yourself and realize it's going to behoove you to ask for help instead of sitting there for hours and days, because what you're doing is you're spending money. You don't see it that way, but for the studio, facility, client, you are wasting money. And the more money you waste, you may as well those are ticks. And when you run out of ticks, man, you're out the door.
Yep.
So... yeah, it was, man, I'm getting nervous even thinking about how I felt that day. I was like, But yeah, you're going to run into those moments. And honestly, it's my whole career. I could have easily said the same thing with starting at ILM, 14 years into my career and feeling exactly the same way.
Right.
So.
Yeah, feeling in over your head is not a feeling of the past. It happens now.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Often, as for me, as my business grows, and I have lots of friends who have grown much bigger businesses than me, and I keep those people close. But they all relate to that feeling, but it still is very, it's a lonely place to be where you feel like you're experiencing this on your own. Even though we've all experienced it, you kind of have to go through it on your own, figure it out. And the lowest points at the time are really awful. But then you look back on it and go, I'm so happy that happened because you learn so much about the ways that you want to do business, inspired by the ways that other people do business in ways that you don't want to do. I've learned a lot from the worst and trickiest moments of my career in terms of that shaping how I do things now.
Nice. Yeah, thanks, guys. That's really, I hope you guys are just soaking this into every bit of your soul, because this is, no matter what profession you're in, you're going to feel like that, and you're going to keep having to keep moving forward. So one more question I'm going to throw at you guys, and then we want to let the students have a shot at it. So let's picture yourself at orientation or at graduation, and a student comes up and asks you a question. What do you wish they would ask you?
Oh, wow.
Oh, I love that question.
That's a good one.
Wow. That is a really good one.
Oh, man.
I have an
Take
answer.
your time.
Well, go, please.
You have an
please.
answer?
Go for
Yeah.
Phil.
Go Phil.
I have an answer.
Phil's up. Camera
have an
one,
answer.
camera two.
Yeah.
Phil.
Go for Phil.
I wish that they would ask me, what's more important, money or freedom? Because at the moment I graduated, I thought it was money because I had none of it. And that's all I wanted, right? Grow a business, make lots of money, and buy cute shoes.
That's good.
But I have since realized it really isn't actually about money at all. You can buy cute things, and then you get used to having them, and then it's not that exciting anymore. So freedom is what I have learned is the best. The ability to sleep in if I feel like sleeping in, the ability to call the shots. Now, I still have to work or I don't make any money. I need that pressure or nothing would get done. But the ability to call the shots. I can hop on a flight tomorrow. If I want to go somewhere, I can do that and make it work. So I often encourage students to think about jobs that, they can work remotely, they can create their own schedule and call the shots in their own life. That has been so much better than anything that you could buy with money.
Nice. Good advice.
That's
Way
excellent.
to go.
That was, I got to bump it.
Right.
And honestly, in that freedom, I think it come in many forms, and it makes me think of conversations just this week I've had with these guys. For us, and you guys, some of you might be there, some of you eventually might be there, but most of you are probably going to have families at some point, and spouses and significant others, and that freedom can be in a form of spending time with them. And just so you guys know, and keeping it real in here, these are things we struggle with.
Jack's my therapist.
I have. Yeah, I mean, we have children. Phil, I don't know if you have any.
No, well, I have a really cute dog. And
Okay, well,
yeah, it's my child.
His child's beautiful.
Yeah.
I have three children. Leslie and Tim both have kids. And the struggle we kind of deal with in our careers is, the career requires a lot of us, and that's kind of life, right? We've all signed up for that. And, me in particular, my struggle is I also commute 2 hours on top of that. So you figure past that, you're getting home maybe at 9 o'clock. Kids are in bed, so you're not seeing them, right? So that freedom can turn into freedom for wanting to spend time with these people, you love. And I got to be honest, that's important.
Yep.
Make yourself happy creatively, make yourself happy in your careers, but also please make sure you are keeping the people who love you happy. Because that's a forever thing, right?
Let's soak that in for a minute.
Seriously, I like it, and it's mostly because I've been getting from all of us that's struggles where we're at now.
Yeah.
But that could be struggles somewhere you were at the moment, right? When you go to Full Sail, I remember when I went here, I lost a fiance because just of how much this sucked in, and this was so important to me that I got to make this for me. I can't worry about this now in my life. And but now it's a different story. There's people in my life who are more important to me. So just make sure that balance is there, guys.
Nice.
It only gets more complicated in that way.
Yes.
Yeah, the freedom that you guys have right now, and I know that not all of you have the freedom that we're kind of talking about, but in terms of learning, it is going to get more complicated because you're going to be starting a business, which is a whole different level of complication, right? You're going to be dealing with clients that are super famous, who have their own restrictions, and you're going to be at their beck and call at times, or based on their schedule, which is going to affect your life and your family as well. And you know what I'll tell you the thing that we observe about ourselves is that I would love to hear the students identify, which, because instead of a question, is we've noticed that no matter what industry you come from, so I did visual effects for film, branding, totally different. But Phil and I can have hours of conversation on the same principles of who we are and what we observe and how we want to conduct ourselves in the industry that are universal. That Jack and I are very close in our career path and industry. Leslie and I are very far apart, but we have this same idea of we're going to go clean the closet. And we sit there in the other room while we're getting coffee, and we go, isn't it amazing that everybody who comes into this little community has the same mentality, perspective, approach, ethic, of stewardship, of servant leadership, of trying to understand how to do the right thing for the client, of family, how do we community. And we surprise ourselves at how universal that seems to be as themes. I'd love to have the students get that, because then they're going to surround themselves with a community that thinks the same way and build that community where they're at. And that's how they can support. So you got a guy who's doing crowds, and you got a guy who's mixing records and branding, but we can sit there and communicate and support each other through these complicated times, which is...
And they all cross over, right?
Right.
I mean, I just met Phil now, but instantly when I leave here, I'm like, I want to be hitting him up about branding, because I've realized over my career, and I know Leslie has, and I know Tim has, branding, even for what we do in entertainment, and that's for whatever you guys are taking, is huge. Your own personal brand nowadays, with the way people instantly are going to Google you, is massive. And we're not like celebrities in the sense of in movies, but you'd be amazed how often I'm getting questions about old Google stuff that I didn't realize is on page 6. Seriously, they're like, "Oh, you worked on." I'm like, "I did. Where'd you find that?" And they link me to it. I'm like, "Okay," and how important that is. That's huge, actually.
I wish, I don't know if it's a form of question per se, but I wish the students were more engaged in their resources on campus. And to an earlier question, you heard all of us reference career development. And for me and for a lot of the other Hall of Famers, I feel like that was a big deal with us, where we really used the resources here at school, even, having conversations with your instructors, your lab instructors, your career development reps. Use the resources that are available to you here at school to the fullest. And that's something I over the years, I haven't seen as much of that as I would like to. They ask certain questions, I'll be like, well, who's your career dev rep, or who's your so-and-so rep, and they can't tell me. And I'm like, you're not using the resources. They're here for that purpose.
Yeah.
I got my first job from a lab instructor.
Yeah, I never left campus when I went to school here. Granted, it was a lot smaller, but still, they couldn't peel me away.
Well, and here's what gets me too, is that people think just walking into career development that they're supposed to just hand you a job.
Right.
Wrapped up, here you go. That's not really how it works. You want to become friends with those people.
a relationship.
In fact, I remain best friends with these people that helped me when I was here on campus. And as far as I'm concerned, you come to Full Sail not to sit in a classroom. You do that as an excuse to learn discipline, to learn what it is you're passionate about. But you're not here to go to school. You're here to meet people that are sitting next to you that will likely become a roommate, which was true for me. My roommate for the first year of living in LA was someone in a different program that I worked together on an after-school project here. Awesome. So, but they're not just going to hand you a job. That's not how this business works. Like, this isn't like, the American Idol of the music industry. You don't get to just fast track, It's so... I just think it's cool too, listening to what you were talking about, being able to, how we all work in different industries, but we all have very similar drive and personalities. Yeah. I can already spot those personalities in about 5 seconds being on campus, which excites me because I'm seeing the faces of the people that will be a part of this pretty epic elite club. That I feel very fortunate to hang around, It's exciting to see those personalities, because that's the kind of drive and personality it takes to make it in the business that everyone wants to work in.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I got my first job because I was going to open lab all the time. I didn't know why my other classmates who wanted to do what I wanted to do weren't in open lab. So my lab instructor sometimes would come in for the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. lab, and I'd be there even though my lab ended at 5 p.m. but I'd still be there cranking on stuff. And I was showing, I didn't even know he noticed. And I was just doing my thing. Like, I got to learn this stuff. I want to figure this out. I was doing VR class, and we were doing this Blade Runner project, and I just had this personal connection to the Blade Runner film that I just loved. And so I just wanted to take our student project to the next level. So I was making sure that my stuff was like the real deal. I just had to get it right for myself. So I had this inner drive, and I was there all the time. And he just kind of noticed that. And one day he came up and he went, I have a job lead for you. And I was like, wait, what? Wait, what? Like, out of the blue. Like, I have a job. There's this defense contractor that does some VR stuff, and they use, I can't even remember the software now. I don't know if it's still around. But he said, but you're really good at it, and I can tell that you really know it, like, better than most of the students. You've really, like, worked hard. I went, oh, okay. I mean, the best way to go about it is you don't even notice who's noticing, because then you know you're doing it right because you're doing it. And when they take notice and you don't even know that they're looking or watching or observing, you know you're in the sweet spot. And I actually went on an interview because he helped set it up, and I got the job. And it was doing military sim. I wanted to be at, ILM or Pixar, or, I wanted to be out there doing film. I worked at that job for like 2 years. But I learned a lot about how to be in a company. I learned a lot about 3D, how to interface in that kind of creative environment. I learned a ton. But it started because I was an open lab. And a lot of my classmates weren't. And you know what? When you came through, and I was an instructor, I was still an open lab.
So you guys know, I was in Tim's last rigging class before he left the school. And so you guys know that what he's speaking on, even during my time here, I developed a great relationship with Tim, along with Chad, who runs a game design program, who's still here. Our group of friends from back then who were instructors, even when I was a student, I made time to, after class, before class, in between my other classes, to develop relationships with them. For whatever reason, at the time for us, the joke was we played Quake 3. We gamed. And that was kind of a common core for us. But that was a common core that kind of grew into noticing we all have kind of a similar drive.
But that's what Phil was saying is, I noticed that in you. Like you said, you can see it in a couple of seconds. You just go, yep, there's Jack.
And that,
boom, I know that guy's going to go. I know he's going to do it.
Those relationships that we developed then, actually between that group of us, the instructors and me and whatever else, has turned into this, for me, at the last 15 years, our group of friends are everywhere now. I work with one at DD, another one's at EA, another one's at Method, and they're all supervisors now. They've all had great careers. And for us, that's just a pool of resources that honestly keeps us employed.
Yeah.
We're literally there for each other, and that's really important.
All right, I want to throw it out to the students, and shout out to you guys for being here at 9 in the morning. Like they're saying, you're taking advantage of the resources. So good for you. But I want to throw it out to you guys so that you have enough time to ask questions. So what we're going to do is you will raise your hand up, and someone will bring you a mic if you're in the house today. If you're online, you'll just put your question in the chat window, and the moderator will facilitate that question too. So anybody ready with a question?
Hi, I'm Matt Schnell, and Jack already partially answered this question, but on the subject of family and finding balance between your job and your family, because it sounds like all of you have very time-consuming jobs. Jack, you said you had a 2-hour commute, and I know Leslie, you said you work with Lauryn Hill and in the recording studio, and you work all sorts of crazy hours. How difficult was it to find a balance between your job, the freedom that Phil was talking about, and getting the time necessary for your loved ones?
I haven't found it yet.
No.
I was going to say.
I'm still looking for that.
Yeah, I'm still looking for
And
that.
I got to be honest, we're not saying that to scare anybody.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Please don't.
It's
Please
not.
don't take it that
But
way.
we're trying to. But we're all 15 plus years into our career, and we're still wrestling.
Yeah. It's a never-ending process because your career keeps going, and you got young people coming up, and you still got to stay competitive, and you still got to put in the work, and sometimes you have a ton of work to do, and you got to put in the hours, and you have clients that will sit and wait for you, and then you got to honor that. Like, and then it's, like right now, I'm here at Hall of Fame, and I got I got Luda, I got Pharrell, I got Akon waiting for me to get back home to do some things. And they're in no big hurry, but then I got that, and then I got 2 little girls and a wife that's waiting for me to come home and spend time with them too. And so it's like, I don't know what to do. And then, my girls are in private school, and they go to dance class, and they go to ice skating class, and they go to so-and-so, and all this stuff costs money. So then you got to balance out the decisions of, okay, I got to come home and spend time, but if I lose out on this Luda gig or this so-and-so gig, then we're not paying for private school and dance class or that new Chanel purse that my wife wants, or what, it's something.
I'd recommend passing on Chanel. Don't tell her.
You know what? The other
honey,
thing too,
if you're watching, it's Jack.
Yeah.
Oh, Jack.
Miss you.
You mentioned about like for loved ones, right?
Yes.
And I think one of the big things that people don't ask is we present this as like we're trying to think about the people that are dependent upon us, but a lot of times we don't talk about our own personal, individual work-life balance. Because if we're always doing something for family or for community and friends or for clients, we're never able to really come to life in a healthy manner because we're not doing it for ourselves. So one of the biggest things I learned with career and starting a business and parent is that if I'm not healthy myself and having to balance myself, I can't do any of those jobs well at all. There's no point. So I think a lot of times we talk about work-life balance and it's always focused on the other people around us. But I think it actually should be focused on us, not from a selfish perspective, but more of if we know how to take care of ourselves, then these things will actually benefit. It's not a selfish perspective.
Gee, I'm going.
It's more of, well, that's because I spent. Welcome to our session, my therapist. I mean, that's like where do you think that came from? I didn't conjure that up on my own. So, is that me?
I think I broke my mic.
and I can tell you, and it's funny. I want to hear Phil's take on this because I had a question from a student. Is it me?
Where is it?
Nobody moves.
We're all frozen.
Frozen. Next question, hurry up.
It's the audio guy.
But I had a question. I had a question from a student, which I thought was random, and now I think about it because Phil bringing up his dog. She was genuinely concerned in her career about what to do with her animals if she had to take a career, say, in Vancouver. Because for maybe a lot of you out here, and it's funny, I was the same way when I was here. I had a cat that I had for 14 years. I mean, I had him when I was at Disney before, through school, and then when I left here, my dad had to take him for a year, but that was my boy at the time, and he was family. But it was a year before my dad could even bring him out to me, and that's another sacrifice to some people, like, believe it or not, that you're going to go through. And I'm sure you feel when you don't even get to see.
Oh my God, of course. Yeah, of course. It's just prioritizing, it's balancing, it's all of those things. So hopefully it doesn't freak you out that we've all had success, but we still haven't quite figured that out. Hopefully it doesn't freak anyone out. It's just the reality of it is that when you invest yourself in a career that requires a lot of you, you have to make sure that you take care of yourself first, and then second, you surround yourself with people that can support you, that want to be a part of it. I hire a lot of family. I hire friends. And there's a lot of people that say don't do that. I would disagree. In fact, they're usually the ones that understand it, want to be a part of it, and you find those right people in your life to kind of support you, and that definitely helps.
Nice. More questions?
So
yeah, we could talk about that all day.
Kind
It's a
of
therapy
not
session
answered.
for all of us.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Me and you.
So Leslie, we're gonna have you lay down afterwards.
Okay, so in this day and age, this 2017, do you feel with proper preparation and with a good team that you don't need to get a job from some other corporation, or can you build yourself now efficiently with correct preparation?
Great question. I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what industry. So, for example, if you're solo freelance VFX, you are going to there's an economy of scale that occurs. So if you're solo and you're VFX, you're going to get this type of job. So if you don't want to get that type of job, you might have to join a corporation in order to do something that you want to do. So there's a direct relationship between the resources that you can offer to a client based on the industry sector that you're dealing with and what kind of the definition of the type of work that you can get back. I imagine, so for example, in visual effects, there's a certain economy of scale in terms of how the industry works. In branding, it's going to be a whole different economy of scale in terms of Phil's representation from a personal connection with his clients. Is that connection is what matters most compared to what technology I can offer, compared to how many computers I have, compared to how many Maya licenses I can own and what I've done in the past. It's really a different thing. So he might actually have an easier entry into his industry as an individual because his makeup of who he is way more dependent on his success in the relationship with the people he's dealing with. Whereas for me, I don't even know how I would be able to carry that out on my own without support because of my industry requires so much heavy lifting.
Yeah, you have to be realistic about the industry you're getting into. I think it'd be very hard to go into your industry, for example, and just start freelancing from the beginning. For me, I didn't actually do this on purpose, but I ended up in an industry where I didn't require a lot of overhead. All I needed was a laptop, thank you Full Sail, and a brain. And then I actually thought about that when I graduated, and I thought, wow, I'm in a good position compared to all my friends at Full Sail that are buying cameras and buying equipment and all of this to build their business, because that sounds expensive. So even though it's different for each industry, it all comes back to something that Leslie brought up in the very beginning, which is value. Everything comes back to the value you offer the person who's giving you money. So when someone hires you for a job or a client pays you money, if you launch a business, they're giving you money, which is an investment in them, making more money, right? So it's really not about what you want to accomplish and your goals and values. It's about what you can do for the other person. When they pay you X amount of dollars to build something, to do something, they want a return on that in some way, shape, or form. So it's about thinking not so much about what you want, but the value that you give others to help those people accomplish whatever their goal is. That's the mentality that helped me early on, because I just learned it, by doing it. And I thought, okay, I have all these goals and dreams and things I want to accomplish. They might not happen overnight, but in order to get to that point, to build my client roster, to build a business when I can even start hiring others to let them in on the fun, it all comes back to giving people value. That's why they're paying you.
The way I look at it is clearly I can't say that can't happen. I think there's been the diamond in the rough stories where you see somebody out of nowhere blew up. So I won't say it's impossible. I will say, to add on what Phil's saying with value, I think your value increases with track history. And I think there's something to be said for gaining experience in whatever field you're in or multiple fields. My value has increased over the years because I made a choice and it was exciting for me to work at different facilities. Some people stay at one place and they're there for the rest of their careers. I saw value in learning from anybody I could, from every facility I could, because it added to my value. In which I'd like to think at this point in my career, it's much easier for somebody like if I go to Phil to brand me because I have a track history for him to build on, compared to a person who comes in fresh and is like, let's do this, son. Make me big. And I'm right out of school and Phil's like,
yeah, based on
okay,
what?
What are you bringing to the table in your 30 minutes of after graduating experiences?
Yeah.
And that's something to keep in mind, because I think you, even as a young entrepreneur, if that's what you're trying to do right out of the gate, whatever venture capitalist you go to is going to want to know what you are bringing to the table. And most of them are going to want to see something past just your one little idea. And I'm sure Tim can attest to that, because when he started his company, he had the backbone of having been at ILM for quite some time and had this plethora of experience that kind of helped him launch what he did.
It opens certain doors,
yes,
because other doors are closed.
I'd say Leslie would say the same thing with the people he worked with, helped launch what he had. And you'll hear this from most of us. There was all this starting point before that launching point of our own thing. So I'm not saying it can't happen, man. Trust me, I'd love to open up Google and you're on the headline like kid launches new IPO for $2 billion off some app he made. But I think it's managing expectations and maybe looking at it also from a different perspective. So
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
This is an online question from Cynthia. She's a computer animation student. She said, Tim, you said your first week at ILM was overwhelming and your shot was passed off to someone else. As a recent grad, it is terrifying thinking about not being able to complete a job. How did you overcome that?
Well, it's really, let's put it this way. I've had many days of total abject failure from the moment I woke up to the moment my head hits the pillow again. And if I allow that to define what I want and who I am, then that's what it'll be. So when I was faced with that at ILM, I looked at the dream at where I was, and I said, I am not going to let this go out of my hands. I am absolutely determined. They're going to have to kick me out of this place. So I think the inner resolve to not let those moments be your only defining aspect of who you are, and that takes a radically different perspective of how you deal with circumstances. Are you reacting to them? Are you responding to them? So I had to pause, walk around the facility. I talked to my parents at the time. I talked to friends. I went out and I had a community to get encouragement. And I just had an inner resolve that said, I'm not going to let this one thing define my ability to have a future here or not, because it's only one thing. And you know what, the thing that you students, I think, really need to hear about is the way that we respond to failure. Because we talked, like a bunch of us talked last night about the failure we just had before we walked to Hall of Fame. And there was a common thread among some of us going, what are we doing here? Like, we've failed so much. Why is Full Sail even like paying for our flight? Really? Give me a break. So you can't let a singular moment say all is doomed, all is lost. You have to have that inner resolve, because there's a ton of Hall of Famers that are kind of looking at each other going, do they really want me here, bro? Because like if they knew what just happened, they'd be like, oh my God, don't talk to the students. He just failed miserably.
Yeah.
So it's about how you bounce back into that and use that inner resolve.
Good. Another question? Mic is on its way.
That's a question.
Oh, there it is.
How you doing? Michael Jones, Recording Arts. You kind of already answered it, sort of, but I just want to hear from all four of you. It's a question about life and life at the Full Sail. In life, we'll have like many successes, and you also have many failures. But my question is, what do you do when you fail, and like how do you bounce back from that and keep moving?
So yesterday I brought something up in one of my lectures where failure is all about how you handle it, and the for me as a mix engineer, and I'm sure kind of applies to all the other disciplines, we're problem solvers, and part of our expectations is to solve problems. And when you have failure, you got to just keep going. You got to keep trying. I remember, I've been a big sports fanatic. I remember Kobe Bryant said one time, he'd rather be 0 for 40-something than 0 for 9. Because if he's 0 for 40-something, that means he kept trying to shoot. And he kept trying to shoot himself out of whatever hole he was in, because he's a scorer. And you can't let the fact that you're not hitting any shots keep you from taking more shots. If you're 0 for 9, that means at your 9th shot, you froze up and you decided you're not going to try anymore. So the mentality of a winner is, I'd rather be 0 for 40-something than 0 for 9. That's the mentality you have to have. You have to feel like no matter how many times I fail, if I fall down 7, I'm going to get up 8. You have to have that mentality of failure is not the end of anything. Failure is just, it's a lesson. It's a redirection to something. It's not the end of something. It's usually a lesson, and it's usually some type of motivation, some type of stepping stone, some type of skills that you needed to develop that you hadn't developed yet. And it's sometimes failure is just a window into this is what you need to be focusing on and blah, blah, blah. So you can look at things a certain way and you can change the way you look at certain things, and you can turn your failures into lessons and then catapult you into success. But almost every successful person I know has failed miserably at something and has failed repeatedly, and failure is not you don't let it define you. You let it motivate you, you let it redirect you, but you don't let it define you.
Absolutely, man. I always joke with people, and I joke with my friends all the time about this. I'm like, I fail at life usually miserably. I like to think I do great in my career, but I struggle in life. I'm looking at my best friend over there and his wife, who I love. I like life. I don't life well. This has been an ongoing theme for me in this last 2 years. I've come to realize, being self-aware is huge, guys, and that'll take a long time to get to. But I'm now at 40 and becoming self-aware of I do not life well. I career well.
No more life advice from Jack.
No, I give it out.
Right.
I can tell you all what not to do.
Right.
I'm good at that.
Okay, that's the goal for life.
I think in those failures, because they're going to happen, and what Leslie said was the nail on the head. I think every single successful person, what makes them truly successful is they have all failed at one point, hugely, at different points in their life. And what differed them from other people who fail, and there's tons of, and you're going to see them in your life, who fail and they walk away. They get depressed, they check out, whatever else. What'll make you different is when you fail, you literally take a step back, which is going to be tough. Look at what happened, take that, learn from it the best you can, and then try to redirect it like, okay, man, maybe I wasn't good at this, maybe I can get better, but if I can't get better, I am really good at this.
Mm-hmm. I don't know of a single person that is in Hall of Fame or speaking on panels or is taking the time out of their career to talk to you students that isn't open about their failure. Mm-hmm. There's nobody that's positioned themselves in this community that's like, oh no man, I'm all look at me, dude. I branded myself. I'm all good. Like I'm all everything. I just keep hitting it out of the park. There's not a single person in this community and spending time to talk to you guys that isn't open about, let me tell you how I totally screwed that one over, dude. Listen to this. And it might be career, and it might be life, and it might be both. Mm-hmm. And they're open about it, and it just is what it is. Because then what happens is you want to come to the kind of people that are in this community, you want to come to their aid and be like, what do you need? How can I encourage you? I'll check in on you every month till the next Hall of Fame.
And it starts here at school. I mean, in class assignments, that you're gonna run into things, some of you, that you just crash and burn, and it happens, and you were prepped, and you're like, what? I don't even know who to talk to about how bad I just did on this.
But then you're actually thankful about it later on, not at the time.
Not at the time.
At the time, you're
but afterwards, yeah.
Being open about it, also just admitting it to yourself, but also, for example, to clients. I mean, just last week, one of my fanciest clients, I kind of screwed up on something. And in that moment, you make the decision, am I going to just sweep this under the rug and not take ownership of it? Or am I going to say, yeah, you know what? I could have done better with this. This literally happened to me a week ago. And I've learned that with clients, they appreciate that. That kind of communication, just admitting it is so powerful. They get it. We're all humans. And even the most successful people that will either be your bosses, your clients, your colleagues, they've all experienced it. So to have humility about that, I think has made my relationship stronger with clients. So in fact, when I screw up, it actually makes things better in the long run. Yep. Honesty is hard, and I don't want to admit it sometimes.
And if the client like drills you because of your honesty, probably not the client you want.
Exactly.
Yes.
And as it applies to you being here at school, like you fail a class, take it again. It's that simple. And sometimes, and I'm not saying the act is simple, I'm saying the decision is simple. You know what I mean? And people, the way I tend to, like I said, I look at things differently. You know, people say things like, you know, if a door closes and blah, 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 open the door again. They work more than once. You know? They're not meant to just be opened once. So if a door closes and you feel like that was your door, open it again. Take the class again. The other night at the Grammys, Adele messed up. She didn't want to curse because she felt like she was being disrespectful to George Michael. And she threw herself off, and she didn't do what Mariah did. And not that it was the same circumstances, but what I didn't appreciate about what Mariah did is you got to own it and handle it a certain way. Even if she would have sang a piece of a cappella and then say, look, this isn't working, blah, blah, blah. But Adele owned her moment, and people actually responded to that. And she wanted to do it again for a very good reason. I thought it was a great reason that she wanted to do it again. And, you know, so you got to, you know, own your failures and then try again. Open the door again. They open more than once, you know.
This has been a really fantastic session. Thank you guys for your great questions, and thank you for attending today. And we want to especially thank our guests, Leslie, Jack, Tim, and Phil, for being here. Appreciate your insights. Everybody have a wonderful day. Enjoy Full Hall of Fame.